Our third source document for cash transactions is EFT payments. So we've looked at cash receipts, EFT receipts, and now we'll deal with EFT payments. And that is issued to our business when it pays cash to another entity via an electronic funds transfer, or EFT. So for example, online banking. And these can be a little tricky to interpret. So let's have a look at some that we might get. This is probably the worst one because we probably get these as a person, but as a business, what would we do if we were Cool Cardigans and we received this EFT payment source document? So we can see it's some sort of receipt from the bank. There's the address of the bank. There's the customer's card number, and it says it was a cash withdrawal of $200, and we can see there's a BSB and account number. So that every bank account in Australia has a BSB and account number. You're not expected to know that. There was no ATM fee, but there was an ATM receipt, and we can see the remaining balance is $22,500. So $200 cash withdrawal, and it says thank you for using an ANZ ATM. So what just happened? Well, the only thing that if we're a business that we could see someone would have access to the business bank account and get an ATM receipt, it must have been the owner of Cool Cardigans was making cash drawings of $200 from an ATM. The source document was EFT payment receipt 511297. And that's really difficult to tell from looking at that document. I don't think you'd ever get anything like that without an explanation, and you probably might even get a source document like that to process ever. There's just not a lot of detail there. That's a very real world document that one would have to process. But if you did get something like that, I'm sure you just get a little description that says the owner provided it after withdrawing funds. But the point is, the owner made drawings, and we know how to record drawings, so we're going to do that in the general journal. So for EFT payment A, we'll say there was a date, 25th of Feb, that was buried up here. The owner took out drawings, and drawings is a negative owner's equity account. And the rules of debits and credits say when negative owner's equity goes up, that would actually be a debit here. So we've got $200. What went down? Now the owner got money, but the owner is a separate entity to the business. From the business's perspective, its cash or bank asset actually went down. And the rules of debits and credits say when a cash or any asset goes down, that would be a credit. And we better do a narration, particularly in this case, because looking just at the document, you can't really infer a lot. So the narration here is really important. It says drawings of cash by the owner, EFT payment receipt 511297. So that's really difficult and probably a little bit beyond anything we might have to process. Looking at this one might be more likely. I mean, we never know what we're going to get on a SAC or an exam. But this one says Cool Cardigans received this EFT payment source document. Now what we got here is BPay. You're not expected to know what BPay is, but all that usually is when businesses pay a bill, or even people actually. You might pay your phone bill to Telstra via BPay. You log into your online banking, and BPay is just how we get funds from one business to another business, or one entity to another entity, and that is an electronic funds payment. So that is our EFT payment B. So what just happened here? Well, let's just stop and sort of break it down. It says payment advice, it's a tax invoice, but that doesn't mean it's a credit transaction. This just means it's got GST in it, which we can see here. It says 165 including GST. So if we look here, so remember, Cool Cardigans received this, and it was to Origin Energy for the monthly electricity. We've got a date. The customer is Cool Cardigans, that's us. The amount paid was 165 including GST. Here's the document number. Here it says BPay receipt 0187101. Account number, we probably won't need that. I'll just put that in because in the real world you might see that. But the main thing here is we got an amount, 165 including GST. We've got a receipt number. We've got a biller code and BPay reference. That's a real world thing. We're not really expecting you to know that now, of course, but just to see what it would look like in the real world. But who are we? We're Cool Cardigans. That's us. We've paid $165 including GST to Origin Energy for the monthly electricity. So what happened here? Cool Cardigans paid the monthly electricity bill to Origin Energy for $165 including GST on the 11th of February. This was paid via BPay. We don't expect you to know BPay, just that it was an electronic funds transfer from one business to another. In other words, online banking. And the source document was EFT payment receipt. Here it is, 0187101. So that is a really complicated document, but as a transaction, how would it go into our general journal? Well, we'll start with the date. We've got the 11th of February here. And we just paid electricity. And electricity is an expense. So when an expense goes up, that would be a debit. We just got to figure out the amount. So it says 165 including GST. So earlier in the course, we learned how to take the GST out. So if we divide that by 1.1, we'll get an expense going up, which is a debit, and that amount will be 150. We also pay GST, and GST clearing is a liability. And when we pay GST, that liability goes down. And that liability going down would be a debit. And it would be $15. So we can get that out of 165 by dividing it by 11. And together, those two figures are the amount of cash that we paid. So the cash asset will go down by the total of these two. And when an asset goes down, that's a credit. So we can see it says 165. Do a narration, which I think is really important with a document like this because it is kind of hard to figure out. But if we just break it down, we can see we paid the monthly electricity to Origin Energy. We paid it by electronic funds transfer, and we've got a receipt here. Let's have a look at one more. Cool Cardigans received this EFT payment source document. And again, we can see the name of the bank up here, but that's not actually a transaction between us and the bank. We've got a date and a time. Account details from Cool Cardigans. There's our bank account details, but it says it's from us, and we transferred to Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers, and there's their bank account details. So money went from this bank account to this bank account. It was $4,400. There's a reference number. Might be more of a real world thing. Probably won't come up for us, but in the real world, when you transfer money to someone else, you should always put a reference in. And they usually tell you what to put so they can match it up. And there's a description. It says payment of invoice 409 for inventory purchase on the 21st of January. So on the 21st of January, we must have bought inventory on credit. So we've got an invoice number. And we're just paying back. So we're Cool Cardigans. We're just paying back Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers. And here's the receipt number here. So how could we summarize what happened here? Cool Cardigans transferred $4,400 to Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers to pay invoice 409 on the 17th of February. The source document was EFT payment receipt 5503. There it is there. So we can infer that previously in January, Cool Cardigans made a credit purchase of inventory from Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers for $4,000 plus $400 GST. And now we're simply paying back our account. In other words, our business, to put this in the general journal, we just need to think, well, we paid an account payable because that's who we owe money to. So we'll start with the date. We've got the 17th of Feb there. I'm going to start with the debits, but it doesn't matter. But I'm going to pay back accounts payable Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers. That's a liability. And the amount I owe them is going down. So when I pay back or reduce a liability, that would be a debit because it's decreasing. So that would go there. The matching credit would go to the cash or bank ledger. That's an asset. And it's an asset that's decreasing. So that would be a credit there. Let's do a narration. We'll say paid Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers for invoice 409, EFT payment receipt 5503. So another really tricky document, probably a little bit beyond what we might be expected to know, but you never know. We're just planning for the worst. Maybe we do get a document like this, but if we just summarize it, here's us, Cool Cardigans, transferred money from our account to Fancy Cardigan Wholesalers for $4,400, and it was for payment of invoice 409 for inventory purchase on the 21st of January.